Okay, here we are in Poser 6, and welcome everybody who's watching this tutorial. My name is Anabran Abdul Kornain, and this is the first of what inshallah will be a series of tutorials on animating figures in Poser. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to start out by showing you the animation tools within Poser, and we just go to the window from the main menu at the top, and we open up our graph editor. This is the graph editor that displays all of the keyframes for any particular channel that you may have selected. In this case, I've selected the left collar, or we already have the left collar of the Toon Boy chip here selected. And we're going to go ahead and open up the animation palette. Okay, this is the animation palette, and as you can see, the left collar here is highlighted. It's referred to as the animation palette here in Poser, but in most professional character animation circles, this is what you would refer to as a dope sheet. As you can see here, you have every scene element, every body part listed here in the dope sheet, and if you click on the little arrow to the left, you have all of its actual channels that can be changed or animated. You see here the taper, the overall scale, the X scale, the Y scale, the Z scale, twist and bend. So you really do have access to every possible channel, meaning you can animate every possible thing in a scene in Poser, including the scale of a body part, or even a prop, or something like that. And these two tools are very important. And you also have the playback buttons here, which are sort of a duplicate of the ones that you find down here. Open that up real quick. It's kind of buried behind a graph editor. But when you're animating, you're really not going to need this one at the bottom here. It's pretty much just for playback. When you're animating, you're going to, by and large, use these two tools. And this is, it's very important that you do learn to use these tools. It's my understanding that many people, when animating, attempt to reach into the viewport, grab the figure's body part, and move it around for the purpose of trying to keyframe his motion. This is a completely inefficient and, well, just bad way to try and animate a figure. When you have a hierarchy here where you can select all of his body parts remotely, you will know what body part you have selected, and you have access to every channel that you want to animate with regard to that body part. If you notice here, on his right, the right ring finger, the second finger joint, which I believe is what is being referred to as right ring 2 here, not to be confused with right-wing Republicans. I mean, we don't want to have any association with them whatsoever. But anyway, as you can see, as I'm selecting the various channels of his right ring finger, you can see it's being that channel is being here's a right ring finger, here's a right ring finger in the graph editor, and there's the taper control. So if I were, for whatever reason, wanted to actually animate the taper of his finger, for example, doing some effect where maybe his finger was swelling up, or after an accident or something, I could do it right here in the graph editor. And to set some keyframes, all you do is basically you can just put your pointer here, click, and you've already set a keyframe. Now you notice when I did that, notice how I've set this keyframe at frame 30. Here we are at frame 30. There's my keyframe in the dope sheet. This is very, very important because later on, inshallah, as we get into these tutorials, I'm going to hopefully be able to explain to you in a relatively understandable way that how once you get your keyframes into your dope sheet, you'll be able to go into your dope sheet and selectively delete, move keyframes, create all sorts of important animation effects such as holds, locking body parts in place, All this can be done within your dope sheet once you've roughed out your animation. So that's a basic introduction to the basic tools. And next, we're going to the next segment. We're going to go ahead and move on and do a simple animation of Chip's right arm and shoulder. So we'll go ahead and move on to that right now. Okay, we've loaded our Chip figure here, and what I'm doing here is I'm setting some basic keyframes along the timeline. We have a timeline of 120 frames. And what you can see, what I'm doing here is at each keyframe I'm setting what I call placeholder keyframes, because when I go in between these and start moving the character, I don't want the preceding keyframes to affect the ones before or after it. I hope that's easily understandable. But inshallah, it'll become clear later on as we actually go through this small exercise. As you can see, I've selected his forearm, and what I'm doing here is just moving it along the bend axis. So he'll sort of just sort of wave his lower arm back and forth. And this is just a very simple animation just to show how easy it is with just a few keyframes and a few placeholder keyframes to keep the various keyframes from affecting the ones before and after. You can create some pretty decent animation within Poser 6, 7, 5, and even 4. Now, as you can see, I've moved to the front and back animation channel and done basically the same thing. Set a few placeholder keyframes, and the actual movement keyframes I'm setting and moving them, changing the values of those. So we have our basic animation of Chip moving his arm there. I don't know, perhaps maybe his hand fell asleep and he's trying to get the blood flowing in it. And that's pretty much all of the animation that we're going to do in this particular test. This is just a basic overview showing that you do not need to keyframe every single frame of your animation to get some pretty realistic and smooth movement with your character. So here we are in the render settings. I'm going to go ahead and do a simple OpenGL preview render. Render the entire 120 frame animation sequence. I'm not going to bother with anti-aliasing or motion blur or anything like that. So we've called up our animation dialog here. I'll just leave it at the defaults for now, with the default codec of animation on the Mac platform. Let's go ahead and raise the quality to high, since this is going to be compromised by the time I've edited it down to post on the internet. Go ahead and give the movie a title. This is the Chip character, a cartoon character, nice little character there you can get for Poser. And we'll go ahead and save this animation. And inshallah, it won't be too long here as it renders through every single frame. Now, even though you only keyframe specific frames, it does render all the frames in between, because you're going to need all of that in-between motion in the frames of your animation. And we'll just go ahead and let that render out here. Shouldn't take too long, and inshallah we'll have a nice little animation of Chip sort of shaking his right arm there. The purpose of this little mini tutorial, which is the first of maybe what inshallah will be a series of tutorials, as I see there seems to be a certain amount of interest in character animation in Poser, is just to show that with just a few simple keyframes you can get some pretty smooth, realistic movement of a body part. Okay, our render's done there. Then we have Chip standing there looking good in his beach shorts, pretty appropriate for this time of year, and his little flip-flop shoes, and there's Chip sort of shaking his arm around. Now I could have gone ahead and animated his entire body, using this methodology, and that would have allowed me to create some pretty realistic movement of his entire body through an entire range of animation without having to keyframe every single frame of his movement. And that's it for now. And maybe inshallah we'll see you next time. Thanks.